James is having burgers again, and today I've really loaded them up. So
Loaded.
yeah.
It's like the Velvet Underground's release from 1970. Loaded.
Yeah, and well, this is a good thing to do if you want to try to stay healthy. I mean, and you still like eating bread, and you still like eating burgers. Well, make your own burgers.
Yeah, and try not to use beef.
And I mean,
like
you
that.
can make burgers out of lots of different things. I've shown a lot of different recipes on my blog over the years, and
way better than soy stuff.
yeah.
So forget about that soy stuff. Soy I don't think is necessarily that great for you, especially when you're eating a lot of it.
Yeah.
And especially when
I was young, that was my protein source. Like, I'd eat a little bit of other things, but that was it, and it's not very good.
And that was before genetic modification or whatever they call it.
Well, I suppose some of it would have been.
Some of it, but
anyway,
now that they've made frankenfood out of it, it's a little bit scary.
The thing is it's best to eat, if you want to eat a healthy diet, eat a lot of vegetables. And
Veggies.
With a burger like this, I mean, I have some mustard at the bottom and some capers and cilantro and pimento peppers, red onions, purple cabbage, and Brussels sprout kraut. That's a lot.
We eat way too much salt in our diet, but I'm not recommending, the capers actually provide the salt here.
Yeah.
But I don't recommend that people cut salt out. I know a couple of people.
Important to have some.
I know a couple of people, they're quite nice people, who got hypothyroidism.
I think the most important thing with salt is just to keep active.
Yeah. So
if you're sweating it out, you can be putting it in.
Yeah, exactly right. So be physically active for any variety of reasons, but that's another reason. But you do want to take in salt or iodine some way or another. So if you're using table salt,
you will never get enough iodine eating salt.
Is that true?
Yes.
So where do you get it from? Fish and stuff like that?
You can get it from various types of seaweed. That's a good source.
Yeah.
So if you go to an Asian market and you buy various different kinds of seaweed, or you could go to Nutters, they have kelp there. It always amazes me. I talked to a woman, I was friends with a woman from Newfoundland, and we were living when I was living and she was living in Grand Prairie, and she was a wonderful person. Anyway, we'd go shopping together after work, because she'd pick me up and drop me off from work, because we lived near each other. And anyway, so we'd go shopping together, and this one day we went to London Drugs, and she stocked up on a whole bunch of sea salt. And she said, I'm buying this, like she was buying huge amounts, like clearing the shelf. And I was like, why are you buying so much? And she said, well, we can't get this at home, so I'm sending it home. So she's sending boxes of salt in the mail, which must have cost a fortune. And I'm like, you can't get it in Newfoundland. That's hilarious, right? Like, why aren't they making sea salt there, or whatever? Instead, she's buying it from Alberta and sending it back to Newfoundland.
They used to make it. Well, go ahead.
Anyway, so I just think things like that are funny, right? Like, we have a lot of ocean around Canada, but we're not producing a lot of seaweed, like dried seaweed for export and stuff like that. It's really strange. Like, we could be selling a lot more kelp and stuff like that, but we're not. Instead, we're importing it from Japan and stuff which is just why. It's here,
We've got, we're really, we tend to think of ourselves as, we're these huge entrepreneurs here. And, United States would be the biggest food exporting country in the world. I don't think we can. But what do you think the second biggest food exporting country in the world is? It's got a population less than Canada. And its land area is minuscule.
I don't know.
It's Holland.
That is incredible. I did not know that. It's something I should have known, but I didn't.
They've got the advantage of location. They're near
Yeah.
some huge markets, and what they'd be doing is the equivalent of market gardening to places like the big population center of Germany is not really one city. It's like Dortmund, Essen, Bochum, and just a huge snarl of cities in the Ruhrgebiet, Ruhr area. So it's the Ruhr River. That's where they do their steel industry and stuff like that. And that's just up the Rhine River from Holland. And then like it's not that far away to Paris and stuff like that, the capital of France, which is in the northern part of France. You'd think it'd be central. It's centrally located, but it's not. And I guess Denmark doesn't have a huge population, but those would be the main things. It's just Hamburg's not that far away, and Hamburg's maybe the second biggest city in Germany. Berlin would be the biggest. So like we've commented before about how you get the Rocky Mountains here, like a particular elevation, you'd have the same sort of climate or similar one that you'd have at certain elevations in the Alps in Switzerland. And when you think of chocolate, where's the one place you think of producing chocolate? Switzerland. Why don't we have a chocolate industry here? We finally got a wine industry in the Okanagan. I don't know how good it is, but what the hey? I think they've got a bit of a wine industry down in
But I mean,
Southern
really,
Ontario.
those things aren't food. I mean, they're exporting.
No, they're not.
Exporting.
But those are. I'm just providing examples, right?
But we're going to talk about food exports, food scarcity, and inflation today.
I just want to finish up. Like in Medicine Hat, they've got something of, because I think it's like free gas. It used to be there, not for cars, but for natural gas for heating, and so they've got something of a greenhouse industry there. Correct? You've heard about it.
Yeah. Well, it would have been a long time ago that I heard about it, though, while I was at school.
Yeah. So it's kind of weird walking through, as I used to do on my Greyhound trips, Medicine Hat. I walk through it in the middle of the night, and it's eerie walking by all the greenhouses that they've got.
Well, it's interesting because with all that, you would think that my greenhouse project that I envisioned, somebody else would have come up with it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We're not big on greenhouses here. We live in southern Alberta, close to Medicine Hat. The other advantage of Medicine Hat is a lot of sunshine.
Yeah.
So we should be running a greenhouse industry somewhere here in southern Alberta. I can't see importing, as I bet you Calgary imports huge hunks of food. Why don't they run a greenhouse industry around Calgary? Calgary's almost like a world's
Well, they have some
class-sized
greenhouses,
city.
but they don't run them correctly.
Okay.
And all of the greenhouses that you see, they're either on the ground or they're dug down a little bit under the ground, which is actually smart. So then the glass is just on top and
Yeah.
that's what you do under the ground. But that's smarter than on the ground. But it's a waste of land surface area. So, and I'll talk about that at a later date.
Yeah,
but we want to talk
away.
about
They should have greenhouses right in the middle of the city.
Yep, on top
the
of
penthouses.
every single building. Every single building. Anyway.
And they should be collecting rainfall off of those things instead of runoff and into the sewer, all this kind of stuff. It's just silliness.
So that's what I envisioned for a greenhouse project. So that should be, if you're building new buildings, that's what it should be. Greenhouse on top. That's it.
You know what sorry, I thought you were. I was just going to comment. I think what that little bird is saying is burger.
I know. We always bring them around. When we bring out the food, the birds come and they're like, yeah, give us some food too.
Yeah.
And well, normally I would have some, but I'm out of seed right now, so I have to go to the store today and buy some seed. But
there you go, guys.
We're going to talk about
okay, go
food scarcity.
Yeah.
Inflation, and because this is okay. What's happening right now is there's a bunch of people who were waving Nazi flags and Confederate flags in Canada
Confederate flags. Hey, that's an American
So-
thing, you idiots.
I mean, that's a declaration of treason right there.
Well, it's not official, but
Yeah.
they're telling
You're
where they
showing
come from. It should
what
be
your
legal to do
opinions are
that,
when you do
but
yeah,
it's
you
not
should
legal to
able
be doing hate crimes, and they're telling us where those hate crimes are coming from. It's not a one-off thing or anything like that. Hate crimes of people of color, what should have been declared hate crimes 2 years ago, harassing hospital workers and patients.
And well, what's fueling this really is the lies from the, I want to call them left-wing media, but they're really not left-wing media. They market themselves as left-wing. But aggressive personality types are always right-wing. Even if they don't realize that they are. They are. So I guess I'll just call those who market themselves as left-wing media aggressive propagandists, because they're all that. So they've been telling all sorts of lies about it started with the Black Lives Matter, and
2014.
they rushed a bunch of immigrants into Canada, which I'm all for. Passive people who value education coming in
And democracy.
if they want that, we'll try to share whatever resources we have, I guess, because I value those people and I don't want to see them die and suffer elsewhere. But we can only take on so many, and we definitely don't want to take on aggressive people and people who don't value education
And democracy.
and learning and democracy. So, but what happened is the government brought in a lot of people who they value. People will say, "Oh, I'm looking for a better life for myself," or whatever, and it's like,
And
"Oh,
my
you want to
family."
make money? Is that what you mean? You want to make money?" So we don't want those, because there's this.
It's to get money.
Yeah.
It's some
They
people
don't
want to
wanna
make
earn it.
money by making goods and providing valuable services.
But if
Those
you don't
sorts of
have the
people,
skills to do that, if you don't have the education to do
you're
that,
not going to make money.
you're not going to make
be
money
trying to get money, and
from other means, by other means. So, so this happened and is happening in Canada, and then there were a bunch of lies that aggressive propagandists who present themselves as the left wing were saying about, oh, well, black people were always here, they were just somehow invisible or something.
erased.
and,
I think is one.
And
the
which is
record was
ridiculous.
erased.
There were a few, but very few. I have to disclose that when I was in my youth, I did something that I'm not proud of now, and I instantly felt bad about it, because I realized down in my gut that what I was doing was a kind of, like, I guess people call it reverse racism, but it's racism. When what was it? Was it said that, I can't remember, it was something like the racism of lowered expectations or something?
Yeah, that's from Ian Hersey Alley. So
Bright woman.
so she's got a master's degree, and she says, and I know she's telling the truth, that she could have got a PhD, but she had so many other things to take care of. With many people saying that it would be just a rationalization. But she got a master's. It was in Holland, I believe, where she got it. And so she's a person of color, and she's not the lightest person of color to be found in the world. She's kind of got maybe more Caucasoid features than many people of color or black people or whatever.
But
go on.
anyway, so there's that
So she's
kind of
not
racism.
for the racism
And
of lowered
then-
expectations. They can't help it. They've got.
Yeah.
They've been raised, you know, in a culture that's, you know, like been hammering them down and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then there's another kind of racism, and I realize that's what it is now. And in my gut, I felt bad about it back then, but there were very few people with darker skin, like more than native kind of darkness, which isn't very dark at all.
No.
But there were very few in Canada. I mean, this was the end of the Underground Railroad, and there were a lot of people back in the day that were escaping slavery and ended up in Canada, but not many, and not here.
Not out here.
And so there weren't very many here, and this is where I grew up in Alberta, and up north, none. There were none there. And so when I would run across somebody, which was like never, there was maybe when I was 14 or 15, 14 I think, I ran across, maybe 15, I ran across a black person, and I found him attractive, and he was doing sports with a bunch of guys, and they were in you know how they pack the sports teams into hotel rooms?
I've been there, done that.
Yeah. So yeah, he was a part of the sports team,
I think fit 8 people to, well, more than that, roughly 8 people in the hotel.
Yeah, there were lots. And so anyway, my friend that I was with, she was I wasn't even into sports kind of people or anything like that, but she was, and so I was with her, and then she was off with some guy and like in the room, and you know, normally at the time I would have been very interested in the whole I don't know what's
ambiance.
The word. Yeah. Because I would have been interested in that scene, but it was a weird kind of scene because it wasn't like people wanted to be what's the word?
Spectated?
Maybe? Or like it wasn't like a group thing. It was like individuals pretending that they weren't in the group. So it was really weird. Anyway, I paired off with this handsome black man who, I mean, he would have been a teenager, right, like me. And so I was making out with him. And the reason that I suppose I selected him, well, I know, because he was exotic, right? Because I had never had the opportunity to make out with a black man. And that's awful. I realize that now. And I felt bad about it then, that I was making out. I'm sure that I knew his name. Very little about him, though. Nothing. It was absolutely superficial, and I was being gross because I didn't know this fellow. I didn't know anything about him, and all I just saw was skin color, and that is a kind of racism.
I wouldn't call it racism. In fact, I wouldn't even call it racial prejudice. Well, in today's terms, it's well, pretty well. It's in my politically incorrect dictionary. It just defines racism as, hey man, I disagree with what you're saying.
Okay, but what I'm saying anyway is there are none. No black people. It was exotic for me to have come across this man. I had never come across a man with dark skin. And anyway, so if you look through you might be thinking, oh yeah, the government was keeping this from us. There were black people all over the place. They were just, okay, look through your yearbooks. Look through Mrs. Emerson's class of grade 5 class or whatever of 1970 or whatever, your class photos. You see a lot of black people in there? 0?
70, 80s.
Yeah.
Your high school would have been around 90 or
so there's a lot of people out there who they're like, wow, they're lying to us. You know, a lot of Canadians that know that there weren't black people everywhere in Canada, they realize this is a lie. And the lies have got to stop, because the result, we're hearing it, we're feeling it right now, the start of it. And that's the people the farmers, not all farmers, just some of them, and the truckers who are blocking borders.
But some of them, too many of them.
And they're blocking goods from getting across. And because of this, we're going to see hyperinflation and high commodity, high commodity prices. So it will be extremely expensive to eat. And if you're in the city, you won't be able to grow enough food to eat. And if you are in the city, even if you can afford gas prices, which are going up, so that you can get out and go berry picking and stuff, you won't be able to get enough to eat. There's already not enough for the bears to eat. They were starving this winter. You're not going to get enough.
They're coming to town sites and stuff like that, checking out garbage. We were hearing about 17 bears in one particular location, or a relatively small location. It might have been one park. It might have been Jasper, Banff. They figured they had to whack them. They weren't thinking, like it's unnatural. The weather patterns that we've got, and well, they should be dropping berries, let's say.
They should be planning for this and have, okay, well, the stores of food are low right now, the bears aren't hibernating, we're going to have to drop some food in for them. They should be thinking that way. Instead, they buried under a bunch of potatoes and stuff like that. They threw out the corpses of the frozen geese and ducks from Henderson Lake and tossed them in the landfill. They could have been tossing them into the middle of the woods somewhere for some bears to launch in on. But
so you drop them from helicopters.
Sure.
You try to have humans not handling this stuff any more than necessary.
All right, so you have about 6 minutes to talk about what you think needs to happen with how to deal with the people who
we've been talking about it for quite a while now.
We have.
It's been about a week.
Yeah.
What the federal government should have done, the provincial governments are awful. At least all the ones with populist or semi-populist governments.
Send in the military to surround them.
Okay. So Justin Trudeau sent in 300 RCMP fellas to help out Ottawa. Ottawa, the same day, maybe afterwards, asked for 1,800. They're saying that they're outnumbered. They're saying it's over 1,000 demonstrators, and they've got. They were saying we've got hundreds to deal with thousands. Okay? You got to send in the military. You should have sent them in. You thought this stuff would dry up and blow away. I knew it would be a problem even when I heard it being announced that they were assembling their forces, and I use that term by design, forces. This is an occupation. I'm not the first person to say that, and it's an occupation that's basically being committed by people. They're advertising. People should be allowed to flop the Nazi flag around the Confederate flag, but they're telling you what they are. So they are traitors. They have committed treason by trying to commit blackmail on Canadians to choke off our economy.
And there would be a lot of people that are good people that are banding together with these awful people right now.
So what should happen? You want me to continue?
Yes.
What should happen is they should tell people, okay, you are using, there was some guy on CBC they were interviewing, he was just glorying in the fact that, hey, we brought along our kids, and they can't starve us out, and they can't force us out, because they'll be subjecting the kids to danger. No. You're the ones who are subjecting your kids to danger. You're using them as human shields.
Yeah.
According to any variety of conventions, Geneva Conventions, Hague Conventions, I'm not sure which ones are appropriate in this situation. It is a crime against humanity to use any person as a human shield, much less kids. I don't care if it's your own or someone else's. You are committing a war crime or a crime against humanity. And frankly, it's when we're dealing about occupation, it's something like the equivalent of a war crime. What you're doing is you're protecting people who are going out committing hate crimes on Canadians.
And
You're protecting them. You are committing a crime against humanity, and the Canadian government should announce that. You are traitors.
Eventually they will.
Anyone who doesn't come out within a certain very short period of time with their kids is a traitor, and you are going to have your vehicles not impounded but confiscated. You can get them back once you get out of jail, and you're not going to get out of jail free, okay? But you're going to lose your kids. You cannot be using your kids as human shields. You're committing a crime against humanity, and you should lose your kids. They should be given 2 days to clear out. What was that?
I don't want to see them lose their kids. I want you to go. You need to leave with your kids now. It's not a safe environment for you. You have put your kids in danger. You need to leave there now with your children, because they will be taken away from you.
To clear out.
It's only a matter of time before the government reacts and your kids will be in foster care. Do you want that? Because that is what will happen to your children. That is what danger you have put them in. And I have talked to a lot of people that
hiding behind your kids.
The foster care system, it hasn't been a good one for a lot of children. So you don't want your children there. Stop putting your children at risk.
You cowards. Hiding behind children. Wow. Committing your hate crimes, flapping your Nazi flags. Hey, don't come after us. We've got our kids along.
Yeah, and the government is going to take them away. They are going to have to take them away if you don't take your kids out of that environment. Because right now, this is the beginning of horrible inflation. You can explain that, I guess.
Well, what's going to happen, I mean, especially right now, we get a lot of our food from elsewhere. We don't grow a lot of our food in the wintertime. Yeah. And now, a lot of it will be coming, Vancouver will be coming by boat. A lot of it will be coming by boat to Montreal, for example. Halifax, Quebec City. But a lot of it's going to be coming up from California. They'll be able to reroute it through Vancouver. No, I shouldn't mention this, but they'll be blocking off railways. The easiest thing to just drive a truck and just drop all it would take is one, and you'd block off a railway. I shouldn't have mentioned that because
no, they will. They won't even stay on the railway. They'll just block it with a sea can or something.
Yeah, exactly right.
They're not going to stay there. Yeah. Why bother?
Well, they could.
It's easy as pie to block a railway.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and I do want to mention, like there have been a lot of faux gauchers going around. Wow, this was awesome. What Indigenous groups were doing, blocking railways. Assholes were taking notes.
You have about 30 seconds to wrap her up.
Assholes were taking notes when Indigenous groups were doing that, and the Indigenous groups went too far. They were trying to use blackmail. They had a legitimate concern, but the Nazis were taking notes. And now it's coming back to haunt people. So, yeah, that's enough.